Good morning, everyone. I am Rhea May M. Limpiada from BSED Mathematics 2, your presenter for today. We are now in Chapter 12, Rules and Competencies of School Head. Let's have the intended learning outcomes. At the end of this chapter, you should be able to discuss the competencies expected of school head as contained in competency frameworks for Philippines and for Southeast Asia. Before we proceed to the discussion, let's have first define what is role, competencies, and school head. Role is a function assumed or part played by a person or thing in a particular situation. When we say role, it is the tasks or responsibilities that was assigned to you as part of the organization or community you belong. Next is competencies. It is the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. The person should have gained in order to fulfill his vision and mission in life. Lastly, school head. It is the staff member of a school with the greatest responsibility for the management of the school. A school head has the vital role for the school improvement, wherein school head should perform good attributes or attitudes in order to imitate those attitudes of the learnings. And now, let's move on to our discussion. As stipulated in Chapter 1, Section 5E of RA 9155, the school head is an administrative and an instructional leader. Why school head is said to be administrative and instructional leader? Because the main function of school is students' learning. So, the school head must spend more time as an instructional leader. Another is that school head has to maintain good ambience of school and to have good interaction with his or her co-teachers for them to become a productive and efficient teachers with desirable attitudes toward students to attain high level of education. Now that we know that school head is an administrative and instructional leader, so what is the difference between instructional and administrative leader? When we say school head as an instructional leader, he or she supervises instruction by observing teachers while they teach, conducting post-observation conferences with individual teachers, mentoring and coaching them, and ensuring that teachers have the needed resources for teaching. These roles of school head as instructional leader is important for teachers to be an effective teachers and for students to have a good learning and for school to have a quality education. Let us now find out the role of school head as an administrative leader. So, school head as an administrative leader is concerns of physical improvement and fund sourcing. The concerns of administrative leadership help improve schools. The more important concern is improvement of instruction as this has a direct bearing of learning. More often than not, however, school heads spend more time soliciting funds for a flagpole, stage, a classroom, pathwalk, waiting shed, etc., right? Leaving no time left for instructional supervision. Let me cut the discussion for us to have a nice breaker. Try to answer this activity wherever you are and then try to differentiate administrative leader and instructional leader. And now, let's proceed to the competencies for school heads. In the list of competencies expected of school heads, there are competencies for both instructional leadership and administrative leadership. Now let's take a look at the competencies expected of school head as contained in the National Competency-Based Standards for School Heads or NCBS-SH, issued in DepEd Order 32 of 2010 on April 16, 2010. And now, let's try to find out what is this NCBSSH or the National Competency-Based Standards for School Heads and how important it is for school heads. Many teachers could be thinking and wondering why they are the only subject of a national competency standards, whether immediate superiors, the school heads, are not. But it's not actually the case for like the teachers who are considered as the heart of the school system. School heads too will be under a national competency standards as stated in DepEd Order number 32 of 2010. So what is NCBSSH? DepEd Order number 32 of 2010 defines it as a list of competency standards which can be used as basis for the school head's decision-making, actions, and performances of their functions. It is used as basis for the preparation of a comprehensive training and development based on expected tasks that will be utilized to deliver training programs to ensure efficiency, effectiveness, and excellence of school heads' job performance. NCBSSH is basically a self-appraisal tool, which is accomplished by the school heads themselves. The school heads are asked to complete a self-assessment instrument where they identify the behaviors they have consistently demonstrated in their role as a school head across the 7 domains. There are 5 principles which guided the framing of the NCBSSH. The first one is the function base. The competencies are based on school head functions as stated in RA 9155 related laws and DepEd policies. The next one is the responsive. Competencies are applicable in any range of contexts, big or small school, city or rural school, and culturally divergent groups. The third principle is impartial. These are applicable to any school head regardless of position item, gender, age, experience, and other personal circumstances. And then the fourth is the coherent. Coherent are clear and logical. And the fifth principle is valid. All performance indicators are research and experience based. Again, the 5 principles guided the framing of the NCBSSH are function-based, responsive, impartial, coherent, and valid. And now, let's move on to the core principle. School heads are competent, committed, and accountable in providing access to quality and relevant education for all through transformational leadership and high degree of professionalism. Core principles are classified into 7 domains, and each domain had competency strength. The first domain is school leadership. Effective leadership is the core of every successful. This domain emphasizes that effective school leaders collaboratively create a vision and establish a climate for teachers, non-teaching personnel, and learners to reach their highest level of achievement. The competency strand of Domain 1 are developing and communicating vision, mission, goals, and objectives are the VMGO, database strategic planning, problem solving, building high-performance teams, coordinating with others, and leading and managing change. The second domain is instructional leadership. Education reforms have created an urgent need for strong emphasis on the development of instructional leadership skills. These domains covers those actions in instructional leadership. Examples are assessment for learning, development and implementation instructional supervision, and technical assistance that school heads take or delegate to others to promote good teaching and high-level learning among pupils or students. The competency strand for this domain are assessment for learning, developing programs and or adapting existing programs, implementing programs from instructional improvement, and instructional supervision. We have the third domain, creating a student-centered learning climate. The domain requires that effective school leaders set high standards and create high expectations for learners at the same time recognizing their achievement. The competency strand of Domain 3 is setting high social and academic expectations and creating school environments focused on the needs of the learners. This domain is important for students to have effective learning and independent learning at the same time. Learning environment or learning climate is one factor of students' learning, so as school head, you should provide them organized and quality learning environment. Instead of spending money on physical improvement of school, spend it more on instructional needs of learner like buying new books or encyclopedia and other learning materials. The fourth domain is HR, management, and professional development. Effective school leaders develop the talents of those around them. This domain includes the nurturing and supporting of a learning community that recruits teachers based on NCBTS and promotes the continuous growth of development of personnel based on IPPD and SPPD. The competency strand of this domain are creating a professional learning community, recruitment and hiring, managing performance of teachers and staff. As an effective leader, you should train your co-teachers to become effective teachers to their students. Because as school head, it is your responsibility. You are committed and you are accountable to the quality and relevant learning of the student and your teacher as well. The next domain is parent involvement and community partnership. Effective school heads engage in shared decision-making with the community in achieving universal participation, completion, and functional literacy. This domain covers parent and other stakeholders' involvement to raise learners' performance. The competency strand of this domain are parental involvement and external community partnership. The next domain is school management and operations. This domain covers the critical role school heads play in managing the implementation and monitoring of their school's improvement plan or annual The competency strand of this domain includes managing school operation, fiscal management, and the use of technology in the management of operations. And lastly, we have Domain 7, Personal and Professional Attributes and Interpersonal Effectiveness. Effective school leaders are models of professionalism and ethical and moral leadership. This domain includes the development of pride in the nobility of the teaching profession. Its competency strand include professionalism, communication, interpersonal sensitivity, and fairness, honesty, and integrity. This National Competency Standard 2 will ensure the continuing flow of dedicated and passionate applicants to the school head's position and not those wishy-washy types whose primary and common agenda is to have higher pay, prestige, and easy work as formally perceived by many school head positions. We're now done discussing the competency framework for Philippines. And now, let's proceed to the competency framework of Southeast Asia. As a member of Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, let's also take a look at the competencies of school heads for Southeast Asia. In 2003, the Southeast Asian Minister of Education Organization Regional Center for Educational Innovation and Technology developed the competency framework for Southeast Asian school heads. The competency framework was envisioned to provide a common foundation for defining what skills and attributes are needed of school heads in order to effectively carry out their roles and lead their schools to excellence and success. Since then, the framework has been used as basis for INUTEC program offerings for school heads in the region. 10 years after, CMEO INUTEC undertook the challenge of reviewing and updating the competency framework to make sure that it remains responsive to the changing context and needs of school head as well as the communities they serve. Accordingly, a consultative and participatory process that spanned 9 months from October 2012 and February to September 2013 and covered 9 countries: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam, was undertaken. The process took into account views and responses of a good number and mix of school heads and stakeholders composed of Ministry of Education officials, teachers, students, parents, and education experts from all over the region. The result is the competency framework for Southeast Asian school heads, comprised of 5 competency domains, 16 general competencies, 42 enabling competencies, and 170 indicators. The 5 general competencies were ranked by the participants in terms of their importance, frequency of performance, and amount of training school heads would need the most as follows. 1 is strategic thinking and innovation, 2 is managerial leadership, 3 is instructional leadership, 4 is personal excellence, and 5 is stakeholder engagement. The competency framework is intended to be a basis for the development of CMEO INUTEC's capacity building initiative for Southeast Asian school heads. It does not replace, but rather complements, existing regional and national standards. Ministry of Education officials may find the framework an important and useful benchmark. School heads may find it useful in keeping themselves informed of the competencies that they need in order to successfully perform their role as school heads in Southeast Asia. This is the competency framework for Southeast Asian school heads. And now let's move on to the last topic, the domains of stakeholder engagement. Domain of stakeholder engagement classified into 2 domains. The first domain is promoting shared responsibility for school improvement. It includes build trust and lead teams or communities for school improvement. Empower the community to work for enhancement of school performance. It is important that school build trust and empower the community for the betterment of school and for the improvement of school performance. And now let's have the second domain of stakeholder engagement. The domain 2 is all about managing education alliances and network. Managing education alliances communicate effectively with different stakeholders, facilitate school community partnership and activities, promote consensus building, and manage conflict and practice negotiation skills. As a school head, You should know how to communicate effectively with different stakeholders for you to build harmonious relationship with them. And as a school head, you should also know how to facilitate school community partnership and activities to improve the learner's learning and school improvement as well. Conflict may happen when making decision and implementing the collaborative plans. So as a school head, you should know how to manage it, and you should also know how to practice negotiation skills, because you as a school head, you will be engaged and deal with different person, special stakeholders, and different administrations. So, you should know what should be done and not when it comes in negotiation with different partnership of school. To sum up my discussion, school head is both an administrative and instructional leader. And administrative and instructional leader has different roles in school. And then there are 5 guiding principles in framing the NCBS SH, which are the function-based, the responsive, the coherent, the impartial, and valid. Competency framework is the standard for school head. There are national framework and there are Southeast Asia framework for school head. National Competency Framework is classified into 7 domains and strands. There are competencies expected of school head as an instructional leaders and as administrative leaders. Focus on instructional leadership are Domain 2, which is instructional leadership itself. Domain 3, creating a student-centered learning climate, which is part of instructional leadership. Related to administrative leadership are Domain 1, school leadership, Domain 6, school management and operations, and Domain 4, human resource management and professional development, Domain 5, parent involvement and community partnership, Domain 7, personal and professional attributes and interpersonal effectiveness can relate to both instructional leadership and administrative leadership, since this has something to do a teacher's personhood, which cannot detach from what a teacher says and does. On the other hand, in the Southeast Asian Competency Framework, the following competencies strengthen school and community partnership are promoting shared responsibility for school improvement, managing education alliances and networks, and also sustaining collaborative relationship with stakeholders. And that's the end of my discussion. Thank you so much for listening.
And again,